movement patterns, surveillance blind spots. He built a war room without walls where every phantom cell operated independently, linked only by strategy. To outsiders, Reap was the city's clean-cut mentor. To the inner circle, he was the general. And the walls between those lives were made of steel. People started noticing strange rhythms.
Do you want to close more deals as soon as next week, possibly? Now, when I say more deals, here's what I mean. I mean 2, 3, 4.
Reap always left events 10 minutes early. He never stayed for photos, never gave interviews. No one knew where he lived anymore. Rumors floated. Some thought he'd gone straight. Others whispered he was up to something bigger. But no.
I know I ain't tripping. But why are they crazy look like that? Is I'm the only one catching that?
No one could pin it down, because Reap didn't leave fingerprints. He left outcomes. The city didn't realize the war was being led by a man whose face they'd printed on pamphlets.
I ain't make this video. I'm just reacting.
Whose name they'd honored in schools, whose story they thought they owned. But Reap wasn't part of their narrative. He was writing his own. And as long as the city kept celebrating his public half, they'd never see the other one coming, until it was far too late. The backlash came fast. After Officer Daniels was found beneath the overpass, the department shifted into high gear. They didn't announce it. They didn't post a press release. But the crackdown on the south side was immediate and brutal. Marked cruisers swarmed the blocks like vultures circling a carcass. Helicopters hovered lower than usual, rattling windows and chasing sleep from entire neighborhoods. Patrols doubled up, then tripled. What started as routine presence quickly became full-on intimidation. Stop and frisks escalated. Young men were lined up against brick walls for walking home. Boys barely old enough to shave were cuffed on curbs for loitering outside their own buildings. One wrong look, one hoodie too low, one hand in a pocket too long. Enough to be thrown to the ground, enough to get choked, enough to vanish for the night. The message was clear. The city was losing control, and it was going to squeeze until something snapped. Malik was the one who snapped first. 16 years old, phantom prospect, honor roll dropout. Reap had been
trying to figure that. It always seem like be the smart one, the one that going to school. You know what I'm saying? Got a good chance going got a good chance to go to college or even play some type of sport or whatever. You know what I'm saying? I'll be the one that, you feel me? Don't let that go over your head.
trying to keep him out of the life, keeping him close, giving him jobs to do at the center. Malik was bright, tech smart, street cautious, eager to be more than just another name on a wall. But that didn't matter to the cops who jumped him on 38th and Jefferson. He was walking home from the library, hoodie up against the cold, earbuds in. They said he matched a description. He didn't resist, but he didn't move fast enough either. By the time they were done, Malik was bloodied and bruised, lying in the back of an ambulance with a cracked rib and a swollen eye socket. The officers left without a charge. No report, no name tags, just silence and an emergency room bill. When Reap walked into the hospital and saw Malik's face, something in him didn't break. It hardened. He didn't ask questions. He didn't speak. He just stood there for a long minute, hands in his coat pockets, eyes locked on the boy's injuries. The nurses gave him space. The staff didn't press. Everyone in that ER knew who he was, even if they didn't say it. Some were scared. Others nodded to him like they understood. Before he left, Reap sat beside Malik and pulled out a prepaid phone. He placed it gently on the table next to the boy's water cup. Malik didn't reach for it. He didn't have to. He already knew what it meant.
The next big thing in restaurants is retail. The restaurant POS you love now includes mobile-first retail tools. Boost revenue, start selling today with
Later that night, Reap met with Tasha. No speech, no rage, just the name of a new target and a quiet nod. Because now it wasn't just about Dre. They'd touched someone else, someone younger, someone Reap still had hope for. And that made it personal in a whole new way. The police thought they were cracking down, but they didn't.
Yeah. 'Cause at first, you know what I'm saying? It don't matter if it, you know what I'm saying, if it was in the streets or not. Get the how allegedly however it went, you know what I'm saying? But then turn around and the little boy that, like I said, got something good going for himself. Just in a bad environment at the bad time, at the wrong time. You know what I'm saying? But at the right time, if you get what I'm saying.
Realize they were just feeding the fire. Every raid, every rough stop, every crooked shove in the shadows, it all added weight to the scale Reap was carefully tipping, and soon it would tip too far to catch. Every war has its architect. Reap had his. Her name was Tasha. She wasn't built for the streets, at least not in the way people expected. No gold chains, no tough talk, no corner reps. What she had was a laptop, 3 burner phones, and a brain wired like a weapon. If Reap was the surgeon, she was the scalpel. Tasha worked out of a back room in an abandoned trap house, dressed up like a front. The building looked dead from the outside. Boarded windows, peeling paint, broken mailbox. Inside, the walls were layered with insulation, soundproofed and lined with folding tables. Wires ran like veins across the concrete. The only light came from LED strips and the glow of 3 monitors that never shut off. Police radio frequencies, real-time GPS, department dispatch logs, license plate cameras. She had them all, cracked open, mapped out, feeding into an AI script she coded herself. Every time a cop tapped a mic, Tasha heard it first. But she wasn't just listening. She was hunting. The next name on the list came from her archive of dirty badges, Detective Walters, a veteran with 2 decades in the department and a file that should have ended his career years ago. Tasha pulled his internal history like it was a playlist. Complaints filed, evidence tampered, wrongful arrests, informants flipped, then disappeared. She dug deeper. Turns out Walters had a habit of planting things, bags, burners, even weapons. Most of it never made the news. Quiet settlements, charged.
Yeah, that's why I stay out the streets, man. You know what I'm saying? He called me a lame. He called me a nerd. You know what I'm saying? Whatever. That's a dirty game, man. You real?
Charges that vanished before trial. But the worst of it, he liked doing it to kids. Teenagers barely out of high school, locked into records they couldn't scrub clean. Boys like Dre Tasha traced his off-duty movements, a dive bar on 12th Street 3 nights a week. He always sat in the corner booth, drank light beer, played darts, no backup, no security, a creature of habit.
Listen to this.
She didn't need to tell Reap what to do. She just sent him the file. A few nights later, Walters left the bar at 11:14 p.m. His car was parked across the street under a busted streetlight. He never made it to the driver's side. 2 figures in dark clothing stepped out from the alley, moved quick, no shouting, no mess. He was gone before the last dart hit the board inside. By sunrise, a video file had landed in the inboxes of every major news station in the city. No watermark, no voiceover. Just a straight-to-camera shot of Detective Walters, face pale, eyes bagged, sweat streaking down his temple. He was talking. He confessed to everything. Names, cases, years of corruption. He admitted to planting evidence in over 30 arrests.
Ooh-wee. Crazy work, Master Noodles. Should've known better. But, yeah, that's crazy. They got a confession. They had to get that on tape, on recording. And so they had to, like, you know what I'm saying? They had to reopen all them cases then. If I'm right.
Some still behind bars, some ruined for life. He listed the precinct supervisors who signed off on the report
Huh.
down his temple. He was talking. He confessed to everything. Names, cases, years of corruption. He admitted to planting evidence in over 30 arrests, some still behind bars, some ruined for life. He listed the precinct supervisors who signed off on the reports, the judges who looked the other way, the union heads who buried the complaints. No edits, no cuts, just truth, unfiltered, undeniable. The badge he used to wear? It was dropped into a manila envelope and hand-delivered to the mayor's office the same morning. The city didn't erupt this time. It buckled. Reporters flooded the precincts. Protesters gathered in front of the courthouse, not with signs, but with names of everyone Walters had framed. Activists demanded releases. Defense attorneys filed appeals. A state investigation was launched before noon. Walters vanished after that. Some said he left town. Others claimed he was in hiding. But the truth? No one really cared, because his legacy had already been dragged into the light and set on fire. And it wasn't a protest that did it. It was the phantoms. Through a laptop, a USB stick, and a girl nobody ever saw coming. And the city was just beginning to realize that the ghosts they thought they buried
Still a girl they never saw coming, huh?
were now behind the wheel. The city woke up to chaos, delivered in high definition. The leaked video of Detective Walters hit every news network, website, and timeline before most people had even had their coffee. Anchors stammered through the footage, cutting to legal experts who couldn't spin it fast enough. Social media exploded. Clips of Walters' confession were sliced into reels, stitched into hashtags, looped over beats, and played on repeat. There was no walking this one back. He hadn't just admitted to planting drugs, guns, and falsified reports. He had detailed when,
Yeah.
where, and who else knew. 31 names, 17 still active. A handful in leadership. 2 who had promoted him. The fire spread faster than anyone could contain it. That afternoon, Walter's badge arrived in a plain envelope, hand-delivered by an anonymous courier to the mayor's front desk. No threats, no message. Just the badge, bent clean in half. The mayor canceled his schedule for the day. Meanwhile, internal affairs scrambled to spin damage control. They released a statement claiming the department was surprised and deeply concerned. But no one was buying it. Not when half of Walter's victims had already begun speaking out. Some had spent years in jail. Some lost jobs, scholarships, families. And now they had receipts. Lawyers lined up like sharks in bloodied water. Civil suits were filed by the hour. Activists demanded sweeping audits. Protesters surrounded City Hall, not chanting but holding silent signs with one word on them. Dre. That name had become something more than a person. It was a code.
And so all this happened in Detroit, right? I know. Nobody never talked about this.
A banner. A reckoning. Inside the department, morale tanked. Officers stopped talking to each other in the locker rooms. The union president skipped his press briefing. Rookie cops started calling out, sick. Some detectives cleaned out their desks quietly, sensing the storm wouldn't spare them. Even the chief looked different, less polished, less certain. The weight of a system cracking beneath him pressed into his shoulders, showed in the way he tugged at his collar on camera. He stood in front of microphones, talking about reform, about trust, about rebuilding. But he never said Dre's name. He couldn't. because saying it would mean admitting it started there, with a boy who didn't make it home and a lie told with no footage to disprove it. Reap watched it all from the trap house. He didn't smile, didn't react. Just stood behind Tasha, arms crossed, eyes on the news crawl. This was never about spectacle. It was about control, about pulling strings so quietly the puppet didn't realize it was dancing until the room started clapping. Walters had been the loudest ghost, but not the last. The phantoms stayed silent. No bragging, no posts, no celebrations. They knew better. The real power wasn't in being feared, it was in being doubted. In forcing the city to ask how deep this really goes. They didn't need to answer. They just needed to let the question hang. And it did. Long enough to rattle the halls of justice, long enough to make those in charge look over their shoulders every time the elevator doors opened. The truth was out now, and truth once spoken doesn't crawl back into silence, not when it's backed by names, files, and scars. Walters was exposed. The machine had lost one of its gears, and the system, for the first time in a long time, wasn't sure how to keep moving forward. It started with a leak.
Is private student loan debt wrecking your life? You really need to talk to YRefi. YRefi refinances distressed.
Not a scream, not a bang, just a single PDF quietly passed to a journalist with too many sources and nothing left to lose. It outlined a series of internal memos, dates, officer badge numbers, explicit instructions from command to withhold or disable body cams during escalated civilian encounters. The directives were labeled temporary field guidance. They were signed off by 3 supervisors. All 3 had ties to Dre's case. Within hours, the document was everywhere. The headline read like a slap. Detroit PD ordered body cam, suppression before teen's death. No spin could save it now. The city had reached its breaking point. At the department's headquarters, walls that once echoed with control now pulsed with panic. Inside the briefing room, officers argued in whispers. Some demanded internal reviews. Others refused to show up at all. One detective walked into his captain's office, turned in his badge, and walked right back out without a word. Officers who once swaggered through the streets now moved in clusters, avoiding eye contact. Patrols ran late. Radios buzzed with incomplete responses. The system was fraying at the edge.
Oh yeah, so they really, yeah, ain't nobody gonna want to talk about that. But they should. It's big right here. This a big, this big part. You know what I'm saying? And I know this whole room was on with the video.
Edges, unraveling from the inside like a uniform worn too thin. Then the whistleblower stepped forward, a mid-level tech specialist, assigned to manage police body cam storage, stood in front of cameras with shaking hands and a tight jaw. She confirmed what everyone feared. Several body cams from Dre's case had been manually disabled before the stop occurred. Not malfunctioned, not glitched, disabled, intentionally. The silence in the press room was surgical. One reporter dropped his pen. Another held her breath as the woman continued, naming the officers involved, the login IDs, the times. She held up access logs, printed, verified. The chief of police, watching from a secure room, turned pale. By sunset, the dominoes began to fall. The deputy chief resigned. The 3 supervisors were placed on indefinite leave. A dozen officers were suspended pending investigation. Federal agents arrived the next morning, badges, suits, laptops, and subpoenas in hand. They didn't knock. They walked in with a list. Outside the precinct, protesters returned. But this time, they weren't pushed back. No riot gear, no barricades, just a wall of faces demanding names, apologies, and permanent change. Dre's name was now chanted not as a question of justice, but as proof that truth had bled through the cracks. News outlets shifted their coverage, no longer about gang retaliation or unrest, but systemic corruption, patterns of abuse, failures in oversight. Dre's image, once reduced to a hoodie and a headline, was now on murals, T-shirts, in the cover of national magazines. The city was no longer spinning the narrative, it was trying to survive it. Reap stayed in the shadows, watched the collapse from a distance. This wasn't celebration. This was strategy playing out. He had aimed not for noise, but for rot. And now the rot was impossible to ignore. The streets, once gripped by fear, had gone quiet. Not because they were defeated, but because they had already won the opening moves. The Phantom War wasn't bullets and bodies. It was exposure. And exposure was louder than any gunshot. Dre didn't have a voice when they stopped him, but now the city couldn't stop hearing him.